The moment someone joins your email list, the job is still only 1% complete. Because even after someone joins, there's still a massive trust gap to bridge if you want to turn them into a paying client. That's exactly why in this video, I'm going to show you how you can bridge that gap so you can turn your email marketing into a money printing machine. As I did here for some of my clients. Here, one of my clients, Fahad, who after 9 months of getting no results, we got him 5K in his pipeline on day one, and then later 30K in his pipeline in 7 days. Another one of my clients, 10.5K in pipeline in 10 days, 10K in pipeline in 7 days. And then even if we keep revenue aside for a second, some of the metrics we've been able to get with email marketing: 95% open rates, 76% open rates, 70% open rates, 89% open rates, 76% open rates, 19% click rates, 41% click rates, 22%, 28%, 8%, etc. So my point with that is, when it comes to email marketing, I know what I'm talking about. So let's be honest here for a second. Building an email list that actually makes you money is probably one of the hardest puzzles that coaches and info product owners like yourself that they face. And the truth is that if you're struggling right now, you're not alone. You might be paying someone to write your emails for you because you don't have the time or energy yourself to invest. But even with that help, your open rates are still low and you're struggling to get sales. Or you created a killer lead magnet that's flooded a ton of signups only to realize that those new subscribers disappear the moment the freebie arrives. They don't reply, they don't buy, they don't engage, and you wonder, why bother even building this big list if no one trusts me enough to invest? Or you've been led to believe the lie that email marketing is about spamming 17 different emails a day and spamming out big promos because that's what's going to generate you sales. But let me just be straight up with you here. Outsourcing the work doesn't guarantee any kind of results, because it's not about who sends the emails, it's about what the emails actually do. Flooding your list with signups and more people in your list won't create real buyers, and blasting out promos and more emails won't move the needle on getting more sales and making more money. Most coaches I talk to fall into this exact same trap. They think that email marketing is all about volume and polish, but that's just surface level thinking. What you have to think is that your audience is completely overwhelmed. They're drowning in noise. Their inboxes are overflowing with empty promises, flashy sales pitches, and join my webinar messages. They've been burned by coaches before promising overnight results, and they're skeptical, tired, and numb to generic social proof. So when you show up with yet another email that sounds just like everyone else's, then guess what happens? They ignore it, they don't open it, or if they do, then they don't buy. See, I get you. I get where you're coming from. It's exhausting. You put your heart into your email marketing or into your business, you have value to offer, but you feel stuck in a loop where your list gets bigger or your emails get better, but your income doesn't. Your confidence might get affected, and you begin to question if email marketing is even really worth it. I get it, it's real frustration, and I've been there firsthand with a lot of my clients. But the most crucial thing to understand is that it's not about email marketing itself. It's almost never really about the marketing medium. Every single medium, SEO, social media, email marketing, all of them work. The problem is that you're trying to sell before you've built the one thing that makes selling possible, and that's trust. Trust isn't something that you just sprinkle on top with a flashy subject line or some social proof with a DM screenshot. It's something you install in your buyers, layer by layer, day by day, brick by brick. Because until your audience believes that you're the go-to expert who's been where they are and can get them to where they want to go, they won't buy, no matter how many times you ask. So the question you should be asking yourself isn't, how do I get more subscribers? Or how do I send more emails? Or how do I make my emails better? But really it should be, how do I position myself in the way so I am the only coach that my audience trusts when it's time to buy? And that's exactly what we're going to unpack next with the 3 layers of trust installation. Now, step 1 in this are credibility stack emails. Because let's be real for a second, most coaches have some proof, but they don't present it in a way that actually builds trust with people. Maybe you've helped 10 clients get results. But if you're only posting about it on Instagram or casually name dropping it on your stories, then it's not doing anything long term for your business. And the reason why that matters is that your audience is experiencing something called attention fatigue. They've been burned by big claims and they're more skeptical than ever to surface level proof. So if you want people to view you as the person who's worth buying from, you can't just drop a number and then hope that they believe it. You have to walk them into a belief. Now, the way we solve this is we use something called the halo effect for our clients, which is essentially a fancy way for saying that if someone sees you as an expert in one area, then they assume that you're skilled in others too. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So in the first few emails that I write for clients, especially in the welcome sequence, lead with credible wins. But don't just say, and this is where most people don't go wrong, don't just say, oh, we helped a coach hit 50K a month. Instead, wrap it in meaning and wrap it in context. Say something like, she was stuck running 5-hour webinars and getting 0 calls. We rewired just 3 of her emails and she booked 12 consults that week with no ad spend. Now, there are 3 reasons why this works. Number 1, specificity builds trust. Number 2, story builds relatability. And number 3, pattern recognition builds belief. Remember, your job isn't just to show proof, but to show that your wins are repeatable. And once we anchor a few clear and grounded wins, trust compounds and your audience starts thinking, if he helped them, then maybe he can help me too. Step number 2 are vulnerability bridge emails. So once we start your credibility and your audience knows that you're legit, there's another layer we need to build before people buy. And that's that they need to feel like you get them, not just on a business level, but on an emotional and on a human level. Because you've been told that people buy from experts, right? But people don't just buy from the most perfect or polished looking experts, they buy from the person who feels the most real and the most honest to them. Here's a story so that I can properly explain this to you. In the 1960s, a man named Elliot Aronson ran an experiment where there were a group of people who listened to recordings of 2 people being interviewed for a quiz show. One of the people was highly competent. He answered 92% of the questions correctly. He was articulate and he was confident. Now, person number 2 was average. Then, at the end of the experiment, Aronson did something very interesting. In one version of the recording, the person number 1, who was better and who answered 92% of the questions correctly, he accidentally spilled coffee on himself at the end of the interview. Just a small, clumsy moment. Now, you think that him spilling coffee on himself, you think that made him look worse, right? Well, the truth is actually the complete opposite. The group of people who were essentially the participants of the experiment, they actually liked the coffee spiller more. In fact, way more. But why? Because when someone is competent and they show a small flaw, then we connect with them. They feel more human and we trust them more. Now, this is exactly what you want to do in your emails, because if all you show is polished client results and perfect frameworks, then your audience might admire you for sure, but they won't connect with you. That's exactly why I help my clients build vulnerability bridge emails, which is the second layer of trust. These are essentially short, intentional parts in your emails where you let people see the human behind the results. Essentially, let people see your failures. Maybe it's a launch that dropped. Maybe it's a client that ghosted you. Maybe it's the time you almost quit because of imposter syndrome. It doesn't make you look weak. It makes you look real. And when you pair that vulnerability with clear skill and competence, like you've done in your credibility emails, then it creates a bridge. And on a subconscious level, in your audience's brain, they think he's been where I am, but he's learned X, Y, Z. He struggled too, but here's how he moved forward. So they want to hear how you overcame your failures and your struggles. Now, this kind of honesty is super powerful because it activates what's called emotional mirroring, where your audience remembers their own version of that moment. They trust the person who's already walked that road. Now, quick disclaimer about this. The rule that I give to my clients is very, very simple. Don't trauma dump in these emails. Don't just dump all of the trauma that you've had in your life. Don't give them a life story. If it serves them, then share it. If it serves your ego, then don't share it. Simple. And just keep it relevant and truthful. The kind that shows that you're human and you're capable. Because the truth is that the coaches and the info product owners who connect and convert, they don't pretend to be perfect, but they show that they've earned their expertise and they've earned the position that they're at the hard way. They've been in the trenches and they've earned it, because that's what makes people lean in. And then finally, step number 3 are proof pyramid emails. Now, this final step is where I've seen most coaches and info product owners, this is where they fall short, because they're still relying on generic testimonials or DM screenshots, and they think that that's enough to call social proof. It's not. Here's what actually works. We build what's called a proof pyramid, where we layer 3 different types of proof that speak both to the emotional and to the logical side of the brain. Number 1 are personal experiments. These are essentially wins from your own business, texting things that you've done. For example, you can say something like, I tested 3 workout splits. The first one focused on 70% compound movements, and that one built the most muscle. Why did it build the most muscle? Because the heavier you lift, the more muscle you're going to build. That was just an example. Now, this works just because it shows that you're in the trenches. You're not just repeating frameworks, but you're involving the frameworks that you're using. And on a psychological level, you're leveraging what's called authority bias. People don't just trust people who teach what they do, but they trust people who actually do what they do. They do the work, they don't just teach it. Now, the second layer of this is client proof with context. Now, I already touched on this a little bit, but here's a little bit more expanded. It's essentially where you take raw wins and you wrap them in meaning, not just Sarah made 20K, but what actually changed. For example, you can say something like, when Sarah joined, she was sending a weekly newsletter that no one opened. We completely tweaked her offer, her messaging, and her positioning, and then she closed 4 clients in 18 days. See the difference? Sarah made 20K, and then that. Its story, its structure, its specificity, and its outcome, not just a number. And finally, number 3 are teaching moments. The final layer is essentially where we use the emails themselves to teach. Essentially, break down how something works, not just to help, but to install a belief that your way is different. Now, the reason why we do this is because of a very, very fundamental psychological principle, which essentially it states that memory is the residue of thought. Now, that may sound very fancy, but essentially what it boils down to is when you make someone think, they remember you. So if your emails make the reader go, oh, that's why my social media might not be converting, or oh, that's why I'm not losing weight, then they're 10 times more likely to remember you when it's time to buy. Because in a flood of generic advice, thought-provoking content helps you stay memorable and helps you build more trust, hence meaning more likely that you convert people. So when coaches ask, how do I build an email list that actually makes money? It's not about volume, it's not about polish, it's not about fancy templates, it's about installing trust layer by layer, brick by brick. Proof that feels real, stories that feel human, and teaching that sticks. That's how you become the only option in your reader's mind, and why the system works, even for coaches who have never seen results from their email marketing before. Now, everything that I've described to you here is extremely important, of course, but it's all useless unless you understand what I'm about to explain to you right now. And that's that trust is not earned. Despite popular belief, trust is not earned. People don't buy from you when they see social proof or when they're impressed. People buy from you because they feel safe, they feel certain, or they trust that you can get them the best possible result. And nothing feels safer than familiarity. Let me show you what I mean. In 1968, there were 2 psychologists, one called Zajonc and one called Rajecki, who ran an experiment where they showed some students random symbols from a fake alphabet. Some symbols appeared once and some symbols were repeated up to 25 different times. Now, these symbols had no, but strangely, the more times that someone saw a symbol, the more that they liked it. The symbols had no meaning, they had no context, but the more that they saw it, the more that they liked it, just because they'd seen it before. Now, this is something called the mere exposure effect. The more that we see something, the more we trust it, even if we don't know why. Now, this changes the way that we write emails forever, because you're not trying to earn trust with a clickbait welcome sequence or the perfect subject line. You're not proving that you're smart, but you're installing familiarity. One email at a time, the tone, the rhythm, the way you explain things. That's what builds connection. So by the time someone's ready to buy, they're not being convinced. They're just choosing who they already feel safe and certain with. Trust isn't something you earn, it's something you install. And this system that I explained to you before, this system allows you to do that every single day by day, layer by layer, brick by brick, until buying just feels like the obvious next step. And congratulations, you now have the full blueprint backed by psychology to build trust with people through your email marketing. So you can farm literally tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars from your email list. But before you get to building trust with people through email, you also need to understand why and how exactly to build an email list. So if you want to learn how to do that, then watch this video next.